Good morning, fourth grade. So today we are going to start a new unit. We are in Unit 2C now, and we are going to talk a lot about like figurative language and visualizing and the moods of stories and different things like that. This unit will take us probably through the fall break, so we're going to have a little bit of time to spend on this before we test on it again. So starting today, this book we're going to start with half of it today and half of it tomorrow. And it is called Barbed Wire Baseball. And it is about a man, and I'm probably going to say his name wrong, Kenichi Zemura. If you're a baseball boy, you probably know his name and can say it properly, but I cannot. And how he spent his years in an internment camp and the changes that they made while they were there. And so I think it's a really, really good book. I read it last year. It is a biography, so that means it is written about his life, and it is about someone. Here we go. Zen watched the wooden bat whack the baseball, hurling it high and straight. He was 8 years old, and it was the first time he had seen a baseball game. But he was hooked. "Father, I want to play," he told his dad. "You're too small," his father said. "Too frail," added his mother. But Zenny didn't listen. He had to play. The other kids laughed at him. "Zenny, you're a mouse," one boy hooted. "A teeny tiny one," called another kid. None of it mattered. When Zenny had the ball or bat in his hand, he felt like a giant. And soon he played like one. Do you notice right here, it said he had to play. And I know that you can't see it because you're not up close, but those words are slanted. And so they used some text features, some print there, because he wanted me to take notice of that and emphasize on he had to play ball. Many springs had passed since that first game. Years of playing in the chill of winter and the sweat of summer. Zenny got taller and stronger and better at baseball. "Why are you wasting time with a silly game?" his mother asked. "You should study and become a doctor," his father said, "or a lawyer." But Zenny knew exactly what he wanted to do, and when he grew up, he coached, managed, and played baseball in the Frenzo Nazi League and the Frenzo Twilight League. He was barely 5 feet tall and weighed only 100 pounds, but he was a star player, casting a big shadow in baseball. It says the Nazi describes the U.S. people whose parents came from Japan in 1930s. America had a huge Japanese American community. So in the 1930s, that's what they called them. The Nazis were the Japanese who had come to America and were living here. Zenny was chosen to play with the star members of the New York Yankees. He led his teams in exhibition games in Japan. He even arranged for Babe Ruth to play there. But the world collapsed for him when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941. For the first time since he had picked up a bat, Zenny felt as if he didn't measure up. The United States was at war with Japan, and 120,000 Americans of Japanese descent who lived on the West Coast were forced into 10 internment camps, most in the desert. The government considered these Japanese Americans to be possible spies, and without evidence or trials, locked them up. Men, women, and children. American citizens were all treated like prisoners of war, housed in barracks, and pinned with barbed wire. So what is an internment camp, do you think? So it's a camp where these people are sent to like kind of contain them. So you notice that it said they were treated like prisoners. They were housed in barracks. A barracks is like a big building where lots of people are sleeping together. And it said they were pinned in by barbed wire. So kind of like a prison where there's barbed wire around the outside and they can't get out. That's where they were taken and put there. Zenny, his wife, and their 2 teenage sons were sent to a camp in the Gila River, Arizona. Outside the camp was bleak and gray and dusty. Inside, the barracks were stark with crowded rows of cots and not much else. Families bustled around, trying to make a home out of nothing. hanging up curtains, arranging tea sets on footlockers, piling dolls and stuffed animals on cots. Zinni stood staring at the dry earth, which was broken up every now and then by a few scrubby bits of green, and all the brown and gray with a dull coppery sky overhead. He felt as if he were shrinking into a tiny, hard ball. So why do you think they were sent to these camps to start with? If you remember, we said that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor at that time, and so anybody that was of the Japanese descent was kind of put away to protect America. Do you think that this was probably good for them? Do you think that this is okay for what's happening to these families? No, I don't think so either. I like that it used the word, it said inside the barracks were stark. What do we think stark might mean? Do we think stark means like bright and happy? Or do we think stark might mean like kind of like gray and boring and just like wasn't comfortable maybe? What do you think the mood of this story is right now? Do you think it's like happy? Or do you think they're kind of sad? Yeah, I think they're kind of sad right now. There was only one thing that they could do to make the desert camp a home: baseball. Zinni unpacked his favorite photo, the one that showed him in uniform, lined up with baseball legends Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, towering like redwood trees beside him. He had played with the Yankee Stars in an exhibition game back home in Frenso, and he hadn't felt small at all. He pinned the picture up over his bed. He was going to play baseball again, here in the desolate middle of nowhere. I think he's a pretty determined man. First, he would need a playing field. There was plenty of empty space, but it was dotted with sagebrush and clotted with rocks. It didn't look like much of a field. Zinni started by chopping down the plants and digging up the rocks, spending long hours in the blazing sun. "What are you doing, Dad?" his son Howard asked. "I can't play baseball without a field," Zinni grunted. "We're going to play baseball?" Howard grinned and started picking up rocks too. Soon Howard's brother Harvey joined them. Then the other boys and men drifted to where Zinni and his sons were, bent over in the glaring heat. By the end of the day, dozens of people were working on the field, not planting a crop, but unplanting, making the ground a smooth surface. Why do you think so many people were willing to help, even though it was so hot out there where they were? Why do you think so many people were like, yeah, let's do it, I can help you out? Yeah, I think that they wanted a happy place too, and so they knew if they helped do this, it meant they could create like a happy place in this sad place. Once the brush and the biggest rocks had been cleared, Howard and Harvey were ready to set up the bases. "Looks good," Howard said. "We're almost set." Zinni shook his head. "Nowhere close. We're making a real ballpark, and we'll do it right." We walked over to the camp commander's office. 10 minutes later, he emerged into the bright sun, smiling. I want us to look at the words when Zinni said, "Nowhere close. We're making a real ballpark, and we're going to do it right." That text right there tells me that Zinni is a determined man, and he likes things done right. "We've got it," he clapped his hands. What we got?" "A bulldozer to level the field. The commander said we could borrow the camps." As Zinni drove the bulldozer, crowds gathered to watch. What is he doing?" an old woman asked her grandson. "He's making a baseball field," for the young man answered. "A baseball field? Whatever for?" she asked. Her son smiled. "So we can play." Once the ground had been smoothed, Harvey brought out his bat and ball. "Now we can play, right?" Zinni shook his head. He still wasn't satisfied. The wind kicked up so much dust from the dry soil that the players would be eating dirt. "We have to do this right." He looked around the camp, hoping to find something to solve the dust problem. Then he got an idea. He diverted an irrigation line to the field and flooded it with water. Once the heat had dried the ground, the dirt was baked into clay. a clean, hard surface without all the dust. Now, Dad? Almost, Zinni answered, but we're not there yet. I like the way that the author says we're going to be eating dirt. That is figurative language. Do you think that he literally means they're going to be eating dirt? No. Well, maybe. Yeah, they're going to be eating dirt because all of the sand's going to be flying in the air and it would be a mess. So an irrigation line is this almost like a sprinkler system here that they could run and it could water a bunch of stuff at one time. So we're going to stop right there because I want you to think about how this is going to go for Zinni. I want you to think about the situations they've been put in and what is happening and how they're feeling about this situation. And tomorrow we're going to read and find out how their baseball field goes.